Peace and prosperity, everyone. Brandon here with the Structure K9 Academy, back again with another great video. So today we are going to be reviewing a video that as of today, this is probably the best video that I've done so far. Now, I know I said that yesterday, but this video is better than the video I did yesterday for sure, right? Now, it's still not what I would say is perfect. Now, nothing is perfect, right? But if I had to classify it, it's probably I would give it a 7 out of 10, right? And I'm going to explain why a 7 out of 10. Probably, and realistically, I will probably have to bring it down to a 6 because there's a major component missing still, right? No, as a matter of fact, we'll give it a 7. We'll give it a 7 because there's still a major component missing, right? So, of course, as always, anytime I react to any of these videos, it is never anything to do personally with the trainers or the handlers. This is just simply me observing, right, critiquing, and giving my perspective on the work. That is literally all it is, right? So, with that being said, without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, so as you can see, the dog is on a back tie, right? Now, from what I'm looking at here, this dog seems to be a pretty advanced dog, right? So when I see a dog that I perceive to be a pretty advanced dog, the question always comes to mind, why is this dog on a back tie, right? Now, not only is the dog on a back tie, but the handler is standing behind the dog, right? So then I ask myself, if the dog is going to be on a back tie and the dog is already a pretty advanced dog based off what I'm seeing, right? What is the point of the handler being there if you're going to have the dog on the back tie? Why not have the handler hold the leash, right? Again, I've said this in videos in the past, right? There's a time and place for a back tie, right? For an example, if you have a dog that is heavily dependent on the handler, then that is a situation that I would use a back tie. But the timing with that has to be right, right? If you have a situation where you have one handler that is getting multiple dogs worked at the same time, then that is a situation that I would call for putting dogs on a back tie. If you have a handler that in the moment is just not capable of understanding how to handle the dog, right? What I would do in that situation, I wouldn't solely put the dog on the back tie, meaning if the handler isn't physically capable of handling the dog, right? Because they haven't gotten the reps in to understand how to work with the dog hasn't got the reps in to understand how to work with the handler, right? And for whatever reason, they're just incompetent, right? You have situations like that where for whatever reason, no matter how you explain it, it's not computing, right? So in that situation, I would put a dog on a back tie, but what I would do, right, as a form of teaching the handler how to get the feel of handling a dog with that much raw power, right? I will put the dog on a back tie. Let's say the back tie is 3 feet long, right? And I will have the handler, let's say the back tie is 4 feet long, right? I will have the handler hold a leash that's about 2 or 3 feet long, right? Which means the handler is doing most of the handling, right? But in the event that the handler cannot hold the dog, then the back tie is still there as a safety precaution, right? But my goal with that is to have the handler feel the dog, have the dog feel the handler, and do my best to communicate to the handler how to properly, because there is a technique to handling a dog that is in training, right? So the technique of how you handle a dog in training is different than the technique of how you handle a dog in a real life situation, right? Or even if you are in a scenario where you are practicing for real life, you're not going to hold the leash the same way you would if it was just purely practice on building the dog, right? In the building the dog phases, the way you hold the leash is different than when the dog is pretty much built and now you're just repping it out. You're repping it out. You're repping it out, right? So in this scenario, which is the major reason why I gave it a 7, is because this dog is an advanced dog and is still being put on the back tie, right? I don't understand why the back tie is so prevalent. Again, specifically on dogs that are advanced, right? Meaning they don't need all of those preliminary things that you would typically do with a green dog, right? And the handler is not a green handler anymore. I don't see the benefit of putting a dog on a back tie, right? It's not necessarily detrimental, but it's not beneficial either, right? So if it's not beneficial, then really it is detrimental because there's no growth, right? You're just kind of stagnant. So, and anytime you're stagnant, right, just like water, when water is stagnant, then it goes bad, right? So anyway, that's the reason why I gave it a 7, is because this dog is still on the back tie and the handler is just in the back. We're going to see what the handler is doing, if the handler has any relevance in the video. So let's get back to it. Okay, dog is on one bite. All right, so I see here that the handler gave the dog a voice command, right, to release that bite and go into the other bite, right? So let's back it up and see, just to make sure. So he engages the first bite. Okay, yep. So the handler gave the dog a command to release that bite and then engage the other guy, right? So now let me break this down because this is very close to what tactical defense handling would look like with a dog, right? Now, again, the handler is not holding the dog, right? So that's a major component that's missing in this scenario. But the idea, right? The foundation is there. The dog obviously has been trained, right, to not be so hyper focused on staying in one bite to where when another assailant comes, it's so focused on that bite, right? You can't get it out of that bite to engage this person, right? So that's a major, major component in defense is, being able to handle your dog in a manner to keep 2, 3, or maybe even 4 people away from you. And then the dog, if necessary, engages the person that poses the most threat, right? And then if the other person comes in a little bit too close, the dog disengages and re-engages on the other person, right? Now, a lot of people in the dog world will consider that fear biting, right? I forget the other term that they use to describe a dog when they pop off the bite. That's the term that they use, right? A lot of people in the dog world would say, oh, the dog is popping off the bite. No, it's not popping off the bite. The dog is releasing the bite, right? Because it was called out of the bite to re-engage in another bite, right? Now, also, there's situations to where the dog can use his own discernment, right? And you can teach a dog that, right? Because you can teach a dog proximity. The same way that if a lion, right, was fighting multiple lions, the lion is going to engage the lion that is the most imminent threat, right? He's not going to go bite the lion that's the furthest away. That's dumb, right? So hopefully that makes sense, right? So you can teach a dog to use his own discernment to understand or to have spatial awareness even while engaged in a bite, to say, oh, this person is coming in to hit me. Let me disengage this because I've already bitten that person up. So that should give me enough time while this person is trying to gather themselves. Now, the dog isn't thinking all of this, but the human obviously can rationalize all of this in their head. But you can teach the dog to understand spatial awareness. So when that person is coming in at a trajectory that looks like they're trying to harm the dog or the person that's handling the dog is allowed to let go of this bite and engage in this bite, because now this bite is the bite that is, or this person is going to be the person that is going to be able to cause the most harm in that moment, right? So again, the dog can make that decision, or if you see fit, you can call the dog out to put that dog on to the other person that's coming in as well, right? So those are, again, I'm kind of giving you some insight on what it means to work a dog in defense. It's not always tied to the psychology of the dog. Yes, that's going to be a part of it, right? But that is not the totality of defense. And that's a question that I get so often. And I don't know how many times I have to say that all defense all the time is not solely about the psychology of the dog, right? It is about how you use the dog in a real life application, right? The tactics that you use, right, to make sure that you and your dog can get out of that situation unscathed, right? No different than learning a self-defense, right, art. No different than learning how to use firearms, right? All of these things are force multipliers, right? To increase the probability that the person that is in the bad situation can get themselves out of the bad situation as fast and as efficiently and as unscathed as possible, right? So again, you see here the handler, even though he's not physically handling the leash, he was able to verbally call the dog out of the first bite and then verbally tell the dog to engage in the second bite, right? So let's keep it going. Okay, so he's in the second bite again. So he's called out of the second bite and called into a third bite. Now, again, in a situation like this, right, a lot of people will say that the dog is biting shallow, right? And, face value, yes, you would have to say that the dog is biting shallow. And the reason why the dog is biting shallow is because it understands that it may have to disengage quickly to go and engage in another bite, right? Whereas, in really the sport dog world, they teach dogs these deep, hard bites, right? So let me explain something. Let me explain physiology 101, so to speak, right? And nature or biology 101, right? So biology, nature, same thing, right? So typically when an animal is in the hunt, right? Because we talk so much about prey drive and defense drive and all of this stuff, right? So let me break nature down for the people that don't really understand nature, right? If you ever look at predatory animals hunt, right? The first bite is very rarely the kill bite, right? Especially when they are hunting animals that are bigger and stronger than them. The first bite is rarely, if ever, the kill bite, right? It takes multiple bites in order for them to actually get into the proper position to take the kill bite, which is typically on the neck, right? The Adam's apple of the animal, right? Now, once they get that kill bite, right? That's when the bite gets deeper and harder every time the animal tries to fight, right? Excuse me. So at that moment, when the animal, excuse me, when the predatory animal, whether it's a wolf, whether it's a lion, whether it's a tiger, whatever it is, right? Once they get a hold of the animal and they have that kill bite, that's when they start countering, right? When the animal, the prey, is losing, right? Losing ground, right? That first bite is never the kill bite. Maybe on an animal that's smaller than it, right? Because obviously physically, it can do more physically with the animal before it actually takes the bite, right? So it doesn't have to use its mouth as much to cause physical harm to the animal, meaning, right, it's not necessarily having to bite on the back legs to tire the animal out. It's not having to bite on the back of the animal to tire the animal out, right? So all of these things that you see predatory animals do in nature, right? they take multiple bites on the animal to drain the animal of the energy, right? Because there's but so much adrenaline that's going to be released into the body before the animal crashes, right? So the goal of the predatory animal is to tire the animal out, especially when the animal is bigger than it, right? So in the dog world, in the protection dog world, right, the standard is the first bite is the kill bite. But the crazy thing about that is the overwhelming majority of people teach the first bite to go into the bicep, right? And then they teach the dog to push in the bite, which actually goes against the nature of the dog, right? Because strategically and tactically, the dog will actually probably circle and do some maneuvers to get out of danger, meaning get out. That really what they're trying to do is get behind the person, right? You ever see a dog that is pursuing, or a dog that actually might be a little scared, it'll get behind a person because it's trying to get out of the way of danger, right? Especially a dog that has been hit a lot, right? Or a dog that is just super submissive, a dog that is super, what we call skittish, right? When they get scared, they will actually circle behind you, right? Because they understand that you can cause less damage from behind because the weapons are in front, right? So now when an animal like that, a predatory animal, is in the hunt and it actually catches, right, or it corners the animal, right, you will see them circle, right? They're never going to just go in and smash. That very rarely happens, right? And if it does happen, it's in a situation where the animal knows it can physically overpower the animal, so it doesn't have to do all those tactical movements to tire the animal out, bite it on the ankles, jump on the back, scratch it up, bite it. Then the animal maneuvers. The lion or whatever jumps off the back, circles around again, looks for the opportunity to go back in for the bite, but it never leaves the fight, right? It's always in the fight, but it may not always be in the bite. So long story short, don't let people make you think that if a dog regrips, right? If a dog lets go of a bite because it's looking for the opportunity to re-engage, not to run away, right? That is a fear biter. A dog that will bite, right, with his front teeth really is more like a nip, right? So it'll nip, and it may even shake a little bit, right? Depending on the dog, right? But it's never really looking to cause major damage. All it's really looking to do is say, it's really like a correction. It's like, leave me alone, right? And if that don't work, then they get the hell up out of Dodge, right? That's different than the dog that goes in, right? And for whatever reason, it sees like, oh, this animal's about to hit me with the tusk, right? Oh, this human is about to stab me with the knife. Let me disengage, circle, tire the animal out, and then boom, when it sees the opportunity, jump in the back, boom, engage again, right? So this is how animals fight in nature, right? So, in this scenario, again, a lot of people will say this dog is a, shallow biter. It's popping off the bite. I mean, it's obvious that this dog has been taught to do this, right? So it doesn't make sense to go in for that full grip when you see people, when you see the handler pushing the dog, the dog head into the bite. Like, who does that? Like, that shit doesn't happen in nature. It's not even practical in a real life situation. It's really not. I understand the showmanship of it, but when it comes to a real life situation, it is just not practical. So yeah, folks. So anyway, that's the video. Obviously, to me, I think it's self-explanatory when we look at this stuff. It just, to me, is self-explanatory, right? But look, as always, I'm not here to change your mind, right? I'm just here to give you the information so you can change your own mind. And with that being said, this is Brandon with the Structure K9 Academy. And until the next video, you are the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. Stay safe, better yet, stay dangerous. Peace and prosperity.